Banking, Bailouts and Bailins, Section 2. This video is a follow-on from the previous video dealing with bailouts and bailins. If you haven't seen that video, I'd recommend you doing so before watching this one. Bailins. In the next financial crisis, there could well be bail-ins. This means that instead of the governments giving the banks money with bailouts, the money required to support failing banks will come out of the personal accounts people have in banks. Apparently, a bank has the legal right to convert the cash in customer deposit accounts into shares for the institution. What this means is that the money that is held in your accounts goes towards capitalising a failing bank. So basically all your holdings in a bank are at risk. If your bank gets into financial trouble in the next crisis, you are going to be the ones that they turn to rather than governments. If you think this won't happen, you might want to think again. This has already happened in Cyprus and elsewhere besides. Precedents have then been set. There's supposed to be insurance or some kind of guarantee up to a certain amount for money that is deposited in banks, but if the banks get into serious trouble, I wonder how governments will fare. The governments struggled in the last crisis. The next one is likely to be far worse. Governments could find themselves in difficulty. As some of you might have already guessed, I'm not too enamoured of the banks. Suffice to say that I don't trust them, and I don't trust governments either, nor for that matter the financial regulators. Anyway, I agree with Lynette Zhang when she says the insurance schemes are little more than ways to make you maintain trust in the institutions. Trust is an important issue when it comes to the functioning of economies. Next, caveat. I just wish to say that I don't claim to be an expert on the subject of bailins. This video is more of a pointer drawing your attention to the issue rather than being anything in depth. I have to confess I haven't paid bailins much mind because I only keep the bare minimum amount of money in my bank accounts at any one time. I have funds sufficient to cover any bills that need paying by direct debit or whatever, and that's it. So a bail-in won't affect me in the slightest. At this juncture, I want to make it absolutely clear. I'm not necessarily advising you to do the same as me. I'm merely telling you what I do. I'm also expressing opinions based on what I have learnt over the years. Be aware that what I have said does not amount to financial advice. Please don't do anything based on what I say without having done some research of your own and then carefully considered things. You need to do your own due diligence. That said, I would recommend you looking at videos on YouTube by Lynette Zhang regarding bailins. She is certainly a lot more knowledgeable than me about this stuff. The only thing that I would say is that she might slant things slightly towards the US. So, bailouts and bailins. Be advised, in either case, bailouts or bailins, it's the ordinary person on the street that tends to pay. How so? In the case of bailouts, governments forced the banks to take money, but you ended up paying for this measure via taxation. You therefore paid, albeit in an indirect manner. With the bail-ins, they will just take money directly from your accounts. Take is of course a euphemism. What I actually mean is steal, but that's just my way of seeing it. Perhaps I'm just being cranky. Anyway, so far as I can see, the only real difference is that with regard to bailouts, the cost was spread over the whole tax-paying populace, whereas with regard to bail-ins, the cost will be met by those people whose banks happen to fail. Either way, you will probably pay. In all honesty, finding out about bail-ins came as no real surprise to me. By that stage, I had long been aware of the fractional reserve banking scam. Sorry, I mean system. I refer you to an earlier video I made entitled Fractional Reserve Banking so you can get a better understanding of this topic. As far as I was concerned, bail-ins were just another crooked banking practice. Banks screw people over every which way. Excuse my language, but there's no better way of putting it. There's a good reason why bankers are called banksters in the alternative community. Much as I don't like them though, I have to admit that I find myself admiring them to some extent, even if it's rather grouchily. You have to give them credit, pardon the pun, for the way that they have managed to cheat people so effectively over all these years. It's a very clever con, and they've managed to keep it going continuously for a long time. And what is more, is all entirely legal. It comes within the bounds of the law. Although finding out about Bailins didn't surprise me, I do still shake my head in astonishment occasionally. I find it quite incredible that they are able to make such massive amounts of money from the fractional reserve banking system, and then, if they start to get into financial difficulty, they simply steal from people's accounts. There are two more points that I wish to make before I finish. There was a lot of anger in the public about bailouts. I wonder how the people will react with bail-ins when they take place. Bankers might well be lynched. A banker might well be hanging from every lamppost in the high street of every town. Finally, I would just like to say that if anyone does any research on this and they happen to find any evidence which goes against what I've put forward here in this video, then I would very much appreciate it if they were to tell me in the comments, and I can reevaluate things. Up until then, I'm sticking to my position. Wise up and rise up.